coming up. There we go. Hey, everybody. It's from my house, our house to yours, episode number 6.
Ooh.
I'm Virginia Amos. I'm a realtor with Caldwell Banker in Old Town Alexandria, and we're talking about life reimagined, life and work reimagined in this time of pandemic. Today, we have with us a local award-winning author, Leslie Pietrzyk.
Pietrzyk, hi.
Pietrzyk, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I've known Leslie for a while when I first got out of publishing and was looking at doing something editorial. And when we first got quarantined, Leslie's name came to mind because I thought to myself, well, you know, writing is pretty much of a solitary occupation anyway. And what does that mean when you really have to be solitary? So Leslie, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us just a little bit about yourself and what you're writing.
Okay, well, I was one of those kids who grew up always reading. I just loved books, and so it was no surprise that I decided I wanted to write books, to be an author. And so I, went to English major, read MFA, graduate degree, and then at a certain point, you just have to
write.
Sit in the chair and get the work done. So I have published 3 novels and 1 collection of short stories. And right now I'm working on a novel, and then I'm also working on some short stories. So when the novel isn't going well, I have something else to do. And then when I'm sick of the stories, I can go back to the novel. And a lot of my work recently has ended up being set around this area. I have a story that takes place in the Majestic Cafe, although you wouldn't know. I mean, people who live here would know that, but it's not mentioned. And I have a story that I actually wrote while I was sitting in St. Elmo's. Like, I literally wrote it by hand while I was drinking coffee one day. So I love this area, and it really sort of infuses my work. And I write and I teach. So I teach at a low residency MFA program. I also offer classes at Politics and Prose and various other conferences in the area.
Nice. Well, tell us a little bit about it was a short story collection for which you won the Drew Hines Prize. Is that correct?
Correct. That's This Angel on My Chest, which is a collection of short stories that are all based on the death of my first husband. And I know that sounds very sad and dire, and believe me, it was sad and dire, but it's also really a book for anyone who has lost somebody. What I like to say is that each story in that collection, 15 stories, is based on something real, something true and hard that happened to me. So it's based in truth. And then I use sort of fictional skills to embellish and change things. And I did that not so people would read the stories and say, oh, I wonder if this is what happened to her, what's the true thing, but because that losing someone, if you have lost somebody, you feel like you are the only person suffering that immense pain. And yet, and especially even now more than ever, like, nobody is immune. If you haven't lost someone yet, you will go through that pain. And so it's something, what fascinated me was this idea of grief as being so individual and also so universal. So trying to capture that feeling.
You're absolutely correct. You do feel all alone, and yet everybody else has been there in some way.
Right. And in fact, I actually, after my husband died, early on, one of the things I did, I went to the library and I checked out like the whole shelf of kind of self-help books, what to do when someone dies, and, read all of them. And, many were comforting, many were crappy, and so on. But the book that I wrote is actually the book that I personally wish that I had been able to read after my husband died. So my audience, I guess, was myself, and then hopefully other people.
Well, I think tell us the name again so we have it.
I'm sorry.
The name of the short story collection.
This angel on my chest.
This angel on my chest.
Right.
All right, hear that, everybody? Pick it up at your local bookstore. So tell us about writing in quarantine. Is it different than writing before quarantine?
Surprisingly, it's very different. And I totally get that on the surface, like, why would it be? I sit in my house and write by myself, not every single day, but, in the ideal world, Monday through Friday, 2 to 6, there I am writing. So why can't I just do that right now? And at first, I really felt guilty that I was having a hard time because it's like so many people are suffering in so many different ways. Why can't I just at least sit down for 4 hours and work on this novel that I want to be finishing? But I found that that was not really a good approach to beat myself up for that, because this is not like any other time. This is not like normal life, as everybody knows. This is a really stressful, scary, emotional roller coaster of a time, and I don't think we can be expected to just act as though everything is fine. And in fact, that's one thing that kind of bothers me, is pretending that things are fine when, hey, there's a pandemic. It's not fine. We can't ignore that. And so what I decided, what made sense to me, so for a while I just kind of flailed around. I'd just like feel bad. I'd sit there, do nothing, feel guilty. And then I thought, okay, I can't work on this novel. I just can't right now, because to do the deep dive mentally that you need to work to sort of pull together a story and keep it all in your head, you need to have kind of an uncluttered life and uncluttered mind. My mind is not uncluttered. So I thought, okay, I give myself permission to set aside the novel for now.
Okay.
And what can I do instead? And so I have some chapters from a failed novel and some characters that I was really fascinated with. And I thought, what if I took that and just tried to turn those into short stories for myself? And like, just, I love those characters. I was really sad to say goodbye to them when I had to. And what can I do with them? And what I liked about this approach for me is there's very low stakes. It's not like, oh my God, you have to finish your novel. It's like, let's just see if this thing that I've already set aside as saying, okay, this, I'm giving up on this for valid reasons, giving up. Now I'll just see, maybe there's something there. Let's just see, let's just have fun. Let's just write in this low stakes environment. And the result has actually been really good, because it's been very relaxing. I've enjoyed my writing. It's actually a really calming part of my day when I sit down and work on these stories. So will they be a collection? Will they turn into something? I don't know. I mean, of course I hope so, but if they don't, I'm fine.
Okay, it's interesting because a word that has been used a lot during this time period, real estate, other businesses, it doesn't matter, is the word pivot, and how people have just had to pivot in so many different ways to accommodate this new reality. Of course, exactly what you did. You pivoted from your novel to short stories.
Yeah, and that also, one of the things that I love, living here in Alexandria, I have found a community of writers through the neighborhood listserv. Actually, is where it all began, and we do prompt writing, which is another very low stakes form of writing. In the other world, we would meet once a month at La Madeleine in Old Town, and we'd sort of chit chat for a little while. Then we would have a prompt that we all wrote to, and we like really open-ended, very simple prompts. So it's just like one word, like basement. So we'd write for 15 minutes to the word basement. Then we get a second word, again, just some very open-ended word, hairbrush, write for 15 more minutes. And then we would share our work if we wanted to. Nobody had to. And that's been really helpful for my writing practice. And it's been heartbreaking to me that we can't meet, but we have pivoted to Zoom meetings. So we had a Zoom meeting that it was really different, as everybody knows. but also it just was so great to feel that we could accommodate, we could still find words, we could still be together even virtually.
And you could still have some connection.
Oh, exactly. Yes. The first thing we all did was just kind of look at each other in the little squares, like, I missed
Yeah.
you.
It's interesting. I think that of all the things that people thought they would miss when this started, whether it
Mhm.
was toilet paper or whatever, the great
Right.
search for whatever it was,
Mhm.
I think lost in all that was how much we crave, need, want that human connection and human touch. It kind of got swept away among the other things, but I think is reemerging now. It's like, oh my gosh, I need to.
Oh, true. And most writers call themselves introverts, and you
Mhm.
do have to be introverted to some extent to literally sit there alone for 4 hours or 12 hours or however long and just be by yourself and write or read. And so I do think most writers see themselves as introverts. And yet, I have had like some of the most wild, crazy, extroverted times with other writers. So we too, even we too, sort of need to hang out with people from time to time in real life. And I have been missing that. I'm usually in my, in normal times, kind of a feast or famine. I will plan all these events with writers. I have this meeting, I see this group for dinner, I'm go to this reading, have tickets to the Penn Faulkner, and then there'll be that moment where it's like, oh my God, enough. I'm sick of people. I got to be alone, and then like kind of be alone. And so at first in quarantine, I had just come from this big driving trip through Nebraska. And so I was kind of ready to be home, be alone. My husband's here, so I'm not totally alone. And it was like calming and nice and, on the surface. But by now, I miss you. I miss everybody.
That's a good segue into something. Now we're gonna get back to the writing, but
Uh-huh.
I also know you as what I call a high-low foodie. That you have an appreciation for really fine food, fine cooking, but you also have a great appreciation for some of the most lowbrow foods there are.
Oh,
And I love that.
now I don't think of them as lowbrow. I just think of food as either delicious and amazing and maybe comforting or not. And, of course, everyone has their own definition. But yes, I will say that one of the most joyful days during the quarantine was when my Pop Tarts arrived. And I've not eaten a Pop Tart for, I don't know, 15 years at least. And these things are so incredible. They're just making me so happy
Are
right
they
now.
a special kind of Pop Tart?
No, no, they're strawberry frosted Pop-Tarts. There was just something so comforting about having a Pop-Tart now. And then the real thing was, in my mind, growing up, whenever we had Pop-Tarts, which were a special treat, we would get one Pop-Tart.
Ah,
And looking at the box, a serving size is 2 Pop-Tarts. So I
there
think
you go.
I think my mother was lying to us all those years ago, like, "Oh, no, only 1 is enough." Like, maybe 1 is good, but 2 is better.
But don't you have some things that you always look forward to when you drive west?
Well, on driving trips, it's when I drive to South Carolina, when I go to teach in the low residency MFA program in Spartanburg, South Carolina, which is, you go on 95 to, just past Richmond, and then you go on 85. So you're
Uh-huh.
going through a lot of North Carolina. And there is the Cookout Restaurant, has an amazing coffee milkshake, or I guess it's called cappuccino
Ooh,
milkshake. So good. And their burgers are pretty good, but the milkshake, if you're trying to, tone down on calories, just go right for that
just
milkshake.
go for the milkshake.
And then there is a sort of North Carolina chain called Biscuitville that I
Mhm.
really love, that is biscuits and sausage and also very good hash browns. So that is another thing I
That's
look forward
important.
to. And then depending on my time, sometimes I'm in a rush to get down to South Carolina. Sometimes I have, stay overnight somewhere. I'm always looking for barbecue.
Wow.
So North Carolina barbecue.
That all sounds good to me.
Yeah, Lexington is sort of a small town famous for barbecue. So I think it's Lexington #1, I think, is the one I've settled on going to.
Okay. Well, that's a good road tour. Good road
Yes,
tour.
definitely. Yeah. No, I'm always looking for the sort of thing that's interesting to eat.
Anything in Nebraska in particular?
Nebraska. Well, I had an amazing steak. I mean, it's kind of a splurge, but it was incredible. I mean, I feel like the cow. I'm sorry to all vegetarians, but I feel like the cow was in the backyard at lunchtime and on my plate at dinner time. It just was so fresh and so delicious. So that was something very good.
Okay, we'll take it. So let's talk about for people who don't know what a low res program is, it's a low residency. It means you're not, when you go for a master's, you're not going to live on campus for an entire year, correct?
Correct. So like a traditional MFA program, graduate degree in writing would be you'd go to, move to whatever, I don't know, town in Montana, let's just say, for 2 years and do your studying. And in a low residency MFA program, it actually models more the real life of a writer, which is balancing, your work and the rest of your life. So that program is also 2.5 years. And we all meet twice a year, usually in June and December, for 10 days, 10 really intense days of workshop and instruction and readings and lectures and all this stuff just packed together, really strong sense of community. And then at the end of those 10 days, everybody goes home back to their lives with their families and their jobs and, all those other demands. And then they work with a mentor, so me being the mentor, for the rest of the semester, hand in stories and response papers to their reading list throughout the semester. And we all meet again, and then they get a different mentor, so they have sort of a different voice in their heads. And so that goes on for 4 semesters. Then they come back at the end to give a triumphant reading of their thesis and a craft lecture that is based on their big 3rd semester research paper that shows how smart they are now. It's a really good way for to sort of feel like an apprentice in writing, I think, because you have the while you're in the residency, you have the workshop where there's, like 8 people around the table who've read your story saying, oh, I really like this, but oh, this needs more work. And what about this? What about this? And that's very helpful, except that sometimes it's really hard having all those voices in your head.
Yeah.
And so you get that, but then you also get, for the rest of the semester, one presumably smart teacher saying, here's what I think about your story, and here's what I see, and here's what you can do to make it better. And so sometimes that's a little less confusing than trying to listen to a whole giant group. But then you also get the whole giant group if sometimes you don't believe the teacher, and then the whole group says, you're right, I don't like this mother character, she's not working for me. And me as a teacher, like, I've been telling you that all semester, and look, everybody else says that. And then the student's like, oh yeah, that's right. I guess I see the point. Like, all right, mission accomplished.
Right. And so this is at Converse College in
Converse College, yes, in Spartanburg, South Carolina, which is a really cool, sort of gritty, artsy old mill town.
Oh, I know Spartanburg. There were some great bookstores there that I.
Oh yes, Top City Book.
Yes, but it's not still a woman's college, is it?
I have to say, no, I mean, it has been. I believe that they are changing over. I'm not sure if it's this year, next year, but I think they are changing over. But yeah, until, like, literally, I heard this news in December. So until then, yes, all women.
Wow, one of the few remaining.
Right.
I'm a big fan of women's colleges, so It's kind of sad to hear.
It is, yeah. Oh, and well, but also to say the graduate programs are not women only.
Okay.
So it's just the undergrad. Yeah.
Right. And you like living on campus there too, don't you?
In the summer, we live in the dorms. Yes, in the winter, we live in a Marriott. And there are there are benefits to both. I mean, you can't beat like somebody coming in to make your bed for you at the Marriott. But what's really nice in the dorms, and they're very nice dorm rooms. It's a real sense of community that we are
Mhm.
about the only people on the campus. So whenever you walk around, there's a student, there's somebody teaching. We all eat together in the cafeteria. You really get to know people really well. I'm still in touch with like lots of former students, graduates.
Nice.
Yeah, you really know people when you are with them 24/7.
And how long have you been teaching there?
I've been teaching there more than 10 years.
Oh,
I
goodness.
the program started, I was one of in the first group of people teaching, and love it so much. I'm so grateful to still be there.
Oh, good. I love that. And
Yeah.
tell us just briefly about the classes that would be more accessible to local residents that you do at Politics and Prose.
Oh, sure, yeah, because not everybody wants to make that big
Right.
investment into a graduate writing degree. But people here are so lucky. There are so many opportunities to sort of dip your toe into writing,
Uh-huh.
or to actually, really learn. So if let's say you used to write and you've set that aside and you want to jump back in, there's all kinds of places. So two of my favorite places to recommend are the Writer Center, which is in Bethesda, and also has classes in Arlington and some other locations, and also online, especially now online. And then I teach at Politics and Prose Bookstore, the Connecticut Avenue, sort of their main branch. And they also, I think, have classes at some other locations too, although none in Virginia. But right now, all their classes are online. And
Uh-huh.
both these places are really reasonably priced with high level of instruction. And Old Town Books here in Old
Oh, okay.
Town also offers classes now that are online, and again really reasonably priced. And they also have book clubs, and there's all kinds of cool things around here. And if I might put in a little plug for a local reading series in Arlington called Readings on the Pike, meets once a month
Yeah. Yeah.
in a Acme pie shop. So you get to go hear some poetry, fiction, eat some pie, meet some cool people. And right now those readings are also online, and those are always free. So those are a great way to sort of step into the literary community.
Oh, good. And do you have that information on your website? The
Um,
class that you teach?
I'm not teaching anything right now. I mean, I
Okay.
would have like past classes, but you could just go
Okay.
to Google Politics and Prose, Google the Writer Center, Google Readings on the Pike, Google Old Town Books. So
Okay.
very easy.
We'll put that information up.
Awesome.
Writers on the Pike. Do they have coconut cream
Readings on the Pike. Readings on the Pike.
readings? Okay.
What was
Reading.
your question?
I said, do they have coconut cream pie, which is all
Oh,
my favorite?
it's a rotating selection. I've never had a bad pie there.
That's what I go searching for on road trips is
Coconut cream pie or all pie?
coconut cream pie.
Well, that's a challenge. That's a really hard one to find. Have you been to Rose Restaurant on 81 in Stanton, Virginia?
Yes.
But they have good pie.
Yes, they
Did
do.
that coconut cream pie meet your approval?
It's pretty good. There was a place in Charleston, South Carolina that was at the top of my list, and then they were a little off the last time I was there, but we'll
Yeah.
we'll see. So, all right. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of our time together, but
Oh,
just a couple of questions for you. You did mention when we were talking earlier that you had some favorite local takeout places for date nights.
oh well, I just would love to promote the job that Neighborhood Provisions Restaurant Group is doing. They're the people who own Vermilion,
Oh,
Evening Star Cafe, and a number of other places. They have a really they have a great email list, so that will keep you updated on all the cool things they're doing, bagels, and brunch. And then my husband and I guess we're almost getting addicted since this is the second week in a row, Saturday night date night food, which you choose from 2 items. You get appetizer, entree, dessert, and they will deliver it to you. Or I think you can go pick it up at Evening Star Cafe, but deliver it to you. And then you can add on some cocktails or beer or wine. And the food we had last week was so outstanding that we are doing it again this week. And I shouldn't say this because it's too late to order, but we are getting lamb meatballs and burrata cheese. And then this chocolate thing for dessert. And all you do is heat it up and unpack it. Well, unpack it, then heat it up.
Yeah. This is elevated takeout. That's nice.
We used our china. It was very fancy. It was like going to a restaurant, but without like somebody annoying sitting at the table behind you.
Talking too loud.
Exactly. No, it was really good.
Good. We'll put that up too. Awesome. And what is the one thing that you are most looking forward to doing, eating, seeing when this is all over?
Wow. I guess I would say I'm most looking forward to seeing my prompt group at La Madeleine as if it were just a normal day, trying to decide, do I want the croissant or do I want the quiche, getting my coffee, hoping for the good table. I'm usually there a little earlier, waiting for them to walk through the door. And I'm just almost getting teary thinking how joyful that will be.
Well, that sounds like a lovely thing. And I know that they will be equally glad to see you. Nancy Carson says, yes, the potato thing.
Yes, the potato thing. That's so sweet.
We like potato things.
See, that's the thing when you have a group. You have sort of your own vocabulary. Yes, the potato thing.
And Jill Clark said, guilty of still loving Pop-Tarts. So you've got some comrade arms there.
Yay.
Arms. Well, listen, it's just been great having you on with us.
Thank you.
I'm having so much fun doing these that I can see going on for months and months and coming back and seeing what progress people have made and what's come of your short stories and your novel. And we all look forward to seeing what you're going to be up to next.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for featuring Alexandria. I love living here. And I know so many people do.
The best place in the world. So until next week, we will say good Friday afternoon and bye.
Bye. Thank you.